Hi, I'm J. Christian Adams, president of the Public Interest Legal Foundation. This is the Protecting Your Vote podcast, and the Public Interest Legal Foundation is the nation's only public interest law firm dedicated exclusively to election integrity. And boy, do we have a guest today that it is very exciting to have. We're going to be joined in a moment by Phyllis Coachman. Phyllis is the lead plaintiff in a case brought by the Public Interest Legal Foundation called Coachman versus New York City Board of Elections. And if you want to hear about the real foreign influence in American elections, that's what this case is about. Some of you may know that New York City made it legal for foreigners to vote in city elections. Now, of course, federal law prohibits foreigners from voting in federal elections, but states can set the qualifications for whomever wants to vote in their state or local elections. And New York City decided anybody who's here, no matter if you're a Chinese national, whether or not you're from Guatemala or the Dominican Republic, you're going to be entitled to vote for mayor or all city offices. Well, that didn't sit so well with a lot of people in New York City. And the Public Interest Legal Foundation is representing 4 black New York City voters, including DeRoy Murdoch, who is a contributor at Fox News. And we're challenging the New York City law as a violation of the 15th Amendment. Now, you might say, what is the 15th Amendment? The 15th Amendment was passed right after the Civil War, and it prohibits any election law or practice that was enacted with a racial motivation, a racial intent, a racial purpose. And I've used this law in multiple cases to strike down various election laws or practices that were motivated by a racial intent. If you have any racial intent at all in an election law, the law is invalid. You can't enact election laws with a racial purpose. So what happened in New York City? The New York City Council, members of the council said openly in debate that they wanted to elevate the voting power of certain racial groups. They wanted to elevate certain favored racial groups that were non-citizens, namely Hispanic, Chinese, Asian, and lift them up by giving them the right to vote. At the same time, they complained about seeing too many white faces. They also broke a bunch of other procedural rules. And lastly, when they were warned that this law would dilute the power, weaken the power of black voters across New York City, they didn't care. So the law was enacted in an illegal way in violation of the 15th Amendment. 4 courageous New York City voters have stood up to challenge the law, and the Public Interest Legal Foundation is proud to represent them in this constitutional challenge. We're joined by one of them, Phyllis Coachman, who is the lead plaintiff in Coachman versus New York City Board of Elections. Phyllis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here, to be a part of your podcast.
Thank you. Just so folks understand, New York City Council passed a law that gave the right to vote to people living in New York City who are not Americans, who are foreigners in the city. Not all of them here, long time, don't have family roots here. And the census data, Phyllis, shows that they're largely from China or Hispanic, right?
Yes.
That's where they're from. And the reason that you're a plaintiff is because you believe that citizenship should mean something when it comes to the right to vote. Is that fair?
Yes, it is. I definitely do believe that. And when I first saw, because the first time I found out about this bill was on Twitter, social media. And when I saw it, I said, oh my goodness, how are they going to allow non-citizens to be able to vote in municipal elections in New York City? I said, that's not the right thing to do, because this would also dilute citizens' votes. You know, we worked hard, especially my people, Black Americans, we worked hard to get the right to vote. So just for someone to be able to live here for 30 days, and also, even if they have a work permit, Now, you know how many people they can get work permits to just for them to be able to vote? So I was really disturbed by that. I didn't understand it. I said, I really don't understand, because my understanding is in order to vote, you have to be a United States citizen, whether it's a naturalized citizen, but you have to be a citizen.
And that's in federal elections for sure. And this was a law
Yes.
that just changed New York City elections. And Phyllis, citizenship ought to mean something, right? Like, you've got roots here. You're committed, right?
Yes, you're right. I have 400 years worth of roots. I can go back on the census to ancestry.com from 1846. That's my great-great-grandfather, Isaac Coachman. So we can trace our ancestry back to the 1700s. My sister said she even found one of my ancestors in the 1700s. So it's not like we just got here. And we know how we got here. I don't need to go through all of that. But we came in, we are descendants, I'm a descendant of American slavery. So my ancestors came through the Atlantic slave trade. And we've been here building up this country, fighting in every war. I have relatives, ancestors that fought in the World War I, World War II, and probably even, I'm not even sure about, could have been other wars too. And my brother died in Vietnam in 1967. I was 10 years old, and I remember that knock at the door. But he wanted to defend his country. And that's what he did. And he was proud. He was a proud soldier. But still, in the midst of all of that, we know he had to come back to racism and segregation. So it's a lot of things. But still, this is my country. This is this Black Americans, descendants of American slavery, freedmen. We call ourselves now freedmen. But this is the country that we know and that we love. So we're trying to protect our rights.
So Phyllis, imagine two baskets. And on one basket is the story of these non-citizens who are given the right to vote and how much they've put into, history of America and how hard it is for them to get the right to vote. That basket's pretty empty. Take a look at your family's experience. Fill that basket up. You've got Reconstruction, the horrors of pre-1895 throughout the South. You've got the Great Migration and the struggles of people moving north. You've got Jim Crow, enforced segregation, the struggles of the 50s, the 57 Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, all of the blood and toil and sweat that went into getting full citizenship in your family. Compared to that other basket is the New York City Council vote. And I got to tell you, that burns me up. And maybe you feel the same way.
I certainly, you're right. I feel the same way. And there's no comparison. Like you said, it's no comparison at all. So I don't understand what's happening with America, in the sense that we're allowing people that have no real interest. When I say interest, no investment in this country to come over and to really actually have all of the rights. They take all of the benefits, a lot of the benefits that should be given to especially freedmen in this country, which we call ourselves descendants of American slavery, and everything is for immigrants. The immigrants, they have the new Americans in mostly every state. They have organizations for them set up. But when it comes to us, when we try to get something, they ignore us because they feel that they already have our vote. So why give them anything? But that's turning around now, because we have a whole new group of folks, Black Americans, descendants of slavery, that's saying we are owed a debt, and this is our country, and we want to be paid what's owed us. So we try to do the best we can to make our voices heard.
Phyllis, on the other side of the country in Los Angeles, illegal immigration in Los Angeles, and when they count people to draw districts for like Los Angeles City Council, the illegal immigration is squeezing out Black political power in Los Angeles because those non-citizens are being counted to draw seats. And the Blacks who live in Los Angeles are seeing their power shrink. In New York, there's cases under the Voting Rights Act that have shown that voting in New York is racially polarized. In other words, for like city council seats, that black voters will vote one way, Hispanic voters in a primary will vote the opposite way. So when you turn over political power to non-citizens, the same thing's going to happen in New York that happened in Los Angeles, is you're going to squeeze out black political power. And in this case, it's citizen power.
Yes, it certainly will. Even in our last election with the mayor, he only won by, he's an African-American male. He only won by like 10,000 votes in the primary. So if we have non-citizens like this 800,000 being able to vote, then that can knock us out completely. Even on Staten Island, we have one, I think it's one African-American woman, one black woman. I don't know if she's African-American, but I know she's black. That's holding office. And that's because her district is predominantly black. So like you said, if you have other people that's non-citizens to be able to vote in all of these different locales and districts, then that will definitely make the black votes diluted.
I will never forget in the city council debate, and I'm sorry, there's a little lag. In the city council debate on the non-citizen voting bill, one of the black council members stood up and said, "This is going to hurt black voters. We need to slow down and take a look at this." And they didn't slow down, did they?
No, they did not at all. And she said it, she stood up, she wanted them to, like you said, to delay the vote so that they could study how it would affect African Americans, and they ignored her completely. A few other people stood up also, because they have an agenda. Their agenda is to have more Hispanics and Asians vote so that they can continue to dilute the black votes. Because black people, even in New York City, we vote heavily. It's a myth saying that we don't vote. We vote in every election, and our votes count. So if they can dilute our votes, then of course they say, okay, now we can get here. We can become the next mayor. I'm not saying, but if you want to be a mayor, or if you want to be a public advocate, whatever office, but just do it the right way.
And Phyllis,
yes,
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Because we have to realize that Hispanics, and first of all, Hispanics is not an ethnicity. Everybody that they include as a Hispanic is the person who speaks Spanish. If we include everybody that speak American as one group, that would be incorrect, right? So how is it that they can get away with saying all Hispanics? It's the same.
Right.
It's not at all. But anyway, so we have to recognize that these things are in place to try to give them more power.
We're talking with Phyllis Coachman, the lead plaintiff in the case against New York City and the Public Interest Legal Foundation's effort to have declared unconstitutional the law that gives foreigners the right to vote in city elections in New York City. Phyllis, one of the things the case is built around is the 15th Amendment. Yes. And the 15th Amendment was passed after the Civil War. I mean, you were one of the people who are enforcing the rights won during the Civil War in the post-Civil War era. I think that's an amazing thing, because not a lot of 15th Amendment cases come along. And what the 15th Amendment says, if you pass a law, an election law that had a racial purpose, then that law is automatically unconstitutional. That's the case. That's the law. Yes. And you are writing that Civil War provision in this case to have this law struck down. I think that's a pretty important thing.
Yes, I think it's very important. And just like I mentioned my history here in this country, my ancestors, and that was written to protect us. Basically, a lot of the laws, even the birth law, well, if a person is born in this country, then they become a citizen. That was based on slaves, giving birth and being able to be citizens of this country. So a lot of laws that's on the books in the Constitution written, it's really for us, but it has been taken over, co-opted by other people, other groups, and they use the law more than we use the law. So that 15th Amendment is very important, because this specific bill was with a racial intent.
Right.
Racial intent. Exactly.
And Phyllis, we are so proud to help you in this fight. This is the founders who wrote the 15th Amendment did not want to see what happened in New York City. They might not have predicted this, but this is why they wrote the 15th Amendment. And we're going to fight this to the end on your behalf. We're so glad that you had the courage to stand up for your convictions, and let's go get them.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it so much, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate Maureen and your whole team, because like you said, it's not easy, but we're here to do the work, and we're going to do the fight. I believe we're going to be victorious.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. You have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Ms. Coachman for participating in this podcast, Protecting Your Vote. We will keep you updated on more stories like the Public Interest Legal Foundation lawsuit versus the New York City law allowing foreigners to vote in local elections. I'm J. Christian Adams. Thank you so much for joining us, and come back next time for the next episode of Protecting Your Vote.